Well, good morning.
How you doing?
I'm here with Rupert Bonington from Mountain Fuel, obviously performance sports fuel provider, and we're just getting together here to really touch base and put our heads together and get some Q&A going that might give some insight into what we do as athletes, how we fuel for events, the importance of fueling, and what it all means in the scheme of everything when we take it all together as a program, and how important nutrition is to some people and how not important it is to others, and where we're missing some vital components to our training programs and plans, because quite often it's overlooked. So yeah, Rupert, what was your main idea for getting into what you're doing now? Obviously, Mountain Fuel is providing sports nutrition to ultra runners and cyclists alike, but you're mainly providing just now to the running market. Is that correct?
Yeah, we kind of, I suppose, concentrated on the running market first because I'm a runner.
Yeah.
So it kind of seemed the natural market to kind of go for. I live in the Lake District, surrounded by hills. Love to be in the hills. Love just running around. And I actually kind of got involved in Mountain Fuel. I've got a business partner called Darren. He founded the business, so he came up with the original concepts, the original system.
Yeah.
And then I actually did a kind of ski business before this. I used to sell ski all days, used to go on lots of ski trips and stuff. And then I got out of that and I was looking for something that I could do that I loved doing, that involved me being in the hills. And it was my brother, he has a gym in Australia, and he was over from Oz, and he was going down to see this guy called Darren. And he was going to talk to him about taking Mountain Fuel over to Australia.
Yeah.
And he kind of came back from that meeting, and he said, look, I really think you should speak to this guy. He's an ex-squaddie. He's got this amazing product, absolutely fantastic, but he's had a bit of bad luck with some previous business partners, and he could really do with some help. So I just started kind of talking to him and stuff, and then basically I used the product for about a year myself,
yeah,
before I kind of committed and kind of got involved, and I just loved the product. And again, he had some real roller coaster times during that year of kind of me getting to know him and the business, and I just loved it. And I just thought, do you know what, I love performance. I've always had an interest in nutrition. My parents, or my dad, is like a well-known kind of mountaineer. So he's always had to take nutrition and things quite seriously when it comes to planning for expeditions. My mum used to do that for him. So I've always grown up in an environment where kind of nutrition has been an important thing. Not to say that I'm an angel, and not to say that I've always been, perfect. I'm like everybody. So when I went through my teenage years, my younger years, nutrition wasn't a thing. It's only when I kind of came back up to the lakes, got into running, got into realizing that if I wanted to go and do my passions and enjoy them day after day, I had to start looking after myself a bit better, and actually have to have a decent diet and actually take on board the right stuff. So that's kind of where Mountain Fuel came from. And then from there, I suppose what I've been able to do is I've been able to, because, I haven't come from that kind of, Darren's like a nutritionist. I haven't come from that kind of background. I've come from I'm a real runner who wants to enjoy being out in the fells for hours and hours. I want to do it day after day. So I wanted products that would work for me in that way. So we kind of combined Darren's scientific knowledge with my very practical knowledge of what kind of works when you're in the real world and what works in different climate temperatures and stuff. And that's why we've kind of developed lots of different products, but they've taken years to develop. So things like we've never produced a standard sports gel, because that just didn't work for me, you know, and I couldn't bear the thought of being able of selling them to somebody. And I couldn't turn around to you and say, take this gel on your ultra or long distance bike ride or Ironman, because I'd be worried that you'd be diving into the toilet or having issues X hours in. So we developed like a totally different product, like a sports jelly that literally took us 2 years to develop. And like our bars, again, our bars are very different. They're not your standard energy bar. You're not your standard flapjack. They're using wholly different base of ingredients, and kind of a different principle as well behind them. And I think that's the difference between us and a lot of products. A lot of people will go to a manufacturer and say, make me an energy drink. And the manufacturer's experience, or they'll say, oh, I don't know, a particular seed is now the in seed, it's now the new in food. You know, can we make something out of this? You know, can we make a marketing hype around this and make a product based around that?
Yeah.
Whereas what
so we're looking at product development and integrity from the grassroots upwards.
Yeah.
Really focusing on the performance, but also the content of what's actually gone into the product, because that is fundamental to the athlete's performance, and more so the gut.
Totally.
I mean, from my perspective, I'm not a nutritionist, but I've done a lot of foundational nutritional courses, so I don't call myself a nutritionist, but I love the science of food, and I'm massive onto my own nutrition and diet, and deal with my clients as well. It's a big input that I have with them, is looking at their actual nutritional intake content. And as you strip it down, you get a diary from a client who's, you know, I tell them I need, you know, at least 10 days of a really good diary, be concise. I mean, it depends on the athlete. Sometimes we go right into the nitty gritty of weighing out the food, so we know exactly the calories that are going in. But it's going to depend on what the athlete's looking for on the outcome side, to how detailed they go in. Yeah. But we always look at content. We always look at, you know, you've got your very, very basic structure of nutrition, which is obviously breaking it down into how many fats, how many carbs, how much protein, how much sugar do you actually intake. Yeah. Looking at the timings, and I'm sure we'll go on to that because timing is so important in any kind of fueling. And then we break it down. And it was one of the reasons when I looked at your product, because I have got a dodgy gut. And when I say dodgy, I mean I've got a sensitive stomach due to probably how clean my diet is anyway. Yeah. And I think when we've got a clean diet, if I have to go away on holiday or something, for example, and have to eat food that I don't normally eat, my body almost rejects it. And I find that I have to be really careful with what I actually put in. I think if we go on the model where we bung in whatever we want, the body's going to process it, it's going to use it, but there's going to be effects to performance. There's going to be effects to, you know, how we're going to the toilet the next day. You know, getting down to the brutal reality. And when I looked at Mountain Fuel from the perspective of challenges that I've done recently and how I'm going to be changing what I do as an athlete, I wanted something that was going to be kind and friendly on my gut, but it was also going to work for me. Because I'm not a big gel taker. You know, I'm pretty much a water in the water bottle, and very much inverted commas real food, as much as I can to fuel. And I was looking for something that you could think, right, well, I'm not going to have to make that or bake it or spend the time to prep all these things. As a father of 6 children with 4 at home, there's a lot of time elements to things, and we often haven't got the time just to go, right, I've got an hour to sit down and prep all this. As much as we want to prep our food, and as much as I advise on doing meal prep, the reality is we live in the real world. We have jobs, most of us. We're not professional athletes, and we need a product that's actually going to substantiate what we want to do. So that's what brought me into looking at your product, and I'm sure we'll get on to how I've used it and the successes I've had with it, and no ill effects after using it, which for me, when it comes to using a gel, because I've used most of the products now, I'm always quite wary, and I've always been wary because of how I felt the next day, or, you know, cramping on the day. And that, you know, that's not happened. And I've been in the saddle 16, 17 hours, which is a long period of time for one hit with not a lot of break. So you get to really find out the truth about what you're eating, how you feel, and what it is that you're putting into your body. So yeah, I can see that from the perspective of myself anyway, to what's gone in, and also my clients who've used your product. There's been a few of them now, all coming back to me and saying, wow, in particular the Feel Good bar. You know, I feel that a 3-hour hard ride just on one of those, and you know, the assimilation was great, and no sticky taste in the mouth, and you know, and it goes in well, and you know, so yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't be here having the conversation as a coach and as an advocate for good nutrition. You know, I haven't put my name to a product ever. Now, I'm just Stuart Ashley, a coach, and you know, I've got my clients, and I do my training, and I do my due diligence, and I'm nothing special, you know. But at the end of the day, I won't put to my name what I think is just something for the sake of it. Or I'll also tell clients, listen, I've tried that, and I don't think it's very good. And I spend the time. I spend the time in the books looking at nutrition, working out how to fuel, and yeah, I'm not a nutritionist, but I've got a very good idea, having tried and tested products and messed around with my own feeling for several years, of what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's it. I think I think there's a lot of very good nutritionists out there, and I think there's a lot of people that do a lot of good and kind of helping people understand about food and things. But there's quite a big difference between your kind of standard food that you need to eat to kind of lose weight and just be healthy, and then you've also got that when you're then dealing with athletes, it's different again, because then they are then, whether it be women or men, they again are very different. And I think that it's too often people apply these kind of rules that they read in books.
Yeah.
And they apply science that they've read off Google to a lot of things. And I think the difference is that we have our approach is quite a balanced approach, and we're trying to look at it as individuals and real people, and taking like a bigger approach. So it's not necessarily all about our products. It's not, you know, it's not just about mountain fuel. It actually is about real food. I say real food again. I'll get onto that, because hold on a minute. The kind of the real food thing is an interesting thing as well, because we'll get people come to us and say, oh, I'm doing an ultra, and they'll say, you know, I'm looking at your products, but the thing is, I only really do real food. All right, okay, yeah. What food do you normally have? Yeah. Oh, well, I'll have like a white bread, you know, sandwich, a pot pie, and this, that, and the other, and you're like, and now I'll have sweets and blah blah blah, and you're kind of like, well, you've actually got more additives and rubbish in the things that you're eating there than you would if you actually looked at maybe having some more kind of natural type foods, but then supplementing it with something like Mountain Fuel or whatever, or whoever's product, and that would actually be a better balance for you and your stomach.
Yeah, that's why it's very important, as I did myself, the real food, because it's one, we're all different. One thing that I've found with going through, you know, 100 probably of individual clients' nutritional diaries and files over the years. Yeah, I've been in health and fitness now 25 years. It's my vocation. It's what I do, and I absolutely love. My main passion is helping people to achieve their goal, helping people to release their limitations. So a lot of the coaching and training that I do is based on the psychological part of the profile of the client. But when we get into the nitty gritty, we see across the board that we've got medical problems, conditions, we've got intolerances, again, another inverted commas. We've got trigger foods that some people may have that are linked to various things that they can't have. Some people are hypersensitive to caffeine and can do all kinds of stuff to them if they have too much. And you know how sugar sensitive someone is, diabetes. There's so much that comes into the profile. But when you sort of strip it down and you see this file that comes in front of you, and you think, okay, the person was talking about having maybe quite a healthy viewpoint that they had on food, and then you see it on paper. There's so much processed food, and processed food in my mind is not real food. Yeah, you can buy it from Tesco's, Aldi, wherever you shop, off the shelf. But when you break it down, and there's been a lot of good programs recently on this stuff, when you break down the contents of, there was one done about a pizza, in fact, and I can't remember the actual program, but it was like, might have been a Horizon special or something. But they looked at what the contents are of a processed pizza, and when you go into it, you know, the salts, the additives, the preservatives,
sugar,
these are really all the unseen. People read fat content, they read sugar content, maybe they read carbohydrate, and they read protein, and they think, right, okay, well, that's the main point, because that's what stands out, because that's the legal requirement. And then you got all this little stuff, you know, all your E numbers, your processed, your whatever. And if you compared that to maybe not even just making the dough at home yourself, but compared that to even taking like a pizza base and then building it up yourself, then immediately you've got a massive turnaround in the nutritional quality, you know, in one food type that you thought was actually okay, but in fact it's full of rubbish, that you've changed with just a few changes, and you've made it into something that's actually not too bad, maybe on a treat day. But yeah, I think there's so many. The good thing now about nutrition is it's becoming far more highlighted. And what I mean by that is there is some good documentation, and you know, the whole fats versus sugars thing, and you know, looking at that into athletes as well, and how we fuel them, and the misconceptions as well. And just from the standpoint, I've got a new client started with me just now, and we're looking at nutrition, and it's way off. It's way off versus the goals that my client wants to achieve. But they thought they were doing the right thing. They thought they were pretty much, from looking at Google, from having a quick search, they were pretty much fueling for what they wanted to do. And in fact, when you strip it back and strip it down, there's so many wasted calories. There's so much bad timing of calories. There's not enough proteins, which is usually apparent. You know, there's not enough protein in the athlete's diet. You know, you're even sort of loosely working on that 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of athlete's body weight. You're seeing that most people that haven't really got the knowledge of that are coming in way short, and that's where good supplementation it can be key. Because like I say, I'm a huge advocate of getting the meal prep done, prepping up, you know, a week in advance, but we can't always do that. But we have to ensure that the product that we are getting, that we are advising a client to use, that we are using ourselves, is something that's going to bolster and supplement what we're trying to do, gut health, good nutrition, from what we're putting in our body. And that goes back to, again, saying that having tested Mountain Fuel products, that I can quite honestly say that there's been absolutely no reaction, no food getting stuck in the windpipe, you know, as you're trying to swallow when you're riding, and you know, that sort of thing, nothing repeating. And it's great that, because often on these long events, and I know a lot of really good endurance cyclists, and so many of them come to me just in normal chat and saying, you know, my guts were horrific. You know, I went through that and my stomach was cramping, and the last 3 hours I felt like, you know, I was almost like my food was, well, not even my food, just everything was just saying no, and I can't eat. There's no way I could put any more food in. And you're burning all these calories off, and you're in this sort of negative, you know, just going down. And it can be better than that, you know?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think what we What we try to get people to understand is that it doesn't have to be a complete sufferfest. You know, fair enough on your short distances, you can get away with quite a lot on short distances, but as soon as you get into the longer distances, people have kind of got used to associating suffering with longer distances. And yes, doing a longer distance, whether you're cycling or running, is tough. And it is hard. And there will be times where you feel rubbish, and there'll be times where you feel better.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you don't have to really, really suffer. You don't have to have periods and long periods of total nausea and total suffering, and then be suffering for days afterwards. And I think it's just trying to get to people to understand how they can kind of balance the different things they put in the system. And often it's kind of less is more as well. It's kind of, you put less of the right stuff in your system, that will actually enable you to do more. And I think sometimes people get stuck in the trap of, right, I need carbs, and they overfill, but they're overfilling with the wrong stuff, and that's what ends up backing up in the stomach, and that's what ends up causing the issues, because the stomach's a muscle, it requires blood flow. And if it has to work too hard, it's just drawing that blood flow away from your working muscles and your organs.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's not essential. So if you're exercising and your muscles and your vital organs are saying, I want that blood flow, but you're putting too much in your stomach and it's working too hard, your brain just shuts it down. And that's what happens. It just simply just shuts it down, and you won't get anything else in. And the only way it's going to go is it's going to come out one way or the other.
Yeah.
So I think for us, it's trying to make people feel better during the exercises. And also the other aspect of it is as well, is if you fuel correctly during an event, whether it be a short event or a long event, you recover quicker. You know, you do recover quicker, so you can actually get back to doing what you're doing and enjoy it kind of the most kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's probably not, to be honest, it's probably not a bad time to kind of talk through some of your experiences. Like, you know, you're doing your 50 challenges, your 50 hill climb challenge. Within that, you've recently done an Everest, and you've got a double Everest to come. So it's probably worth kind of looking at how you first kind of approached those as far as your kind of training, but also how you were then going to apply your kind of nutritional strategy to see what worked, and then compare it to maybe things that you've done before to see what the differences were.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I think, as I said to you, I've been in the actual industry of health and fitness for 25 years, and through that time, there's been so much evolution in the way of coaching, the way of how we do things, the available information that's out there, and how things have changed through the years. As you look back and you think about clients, I'm still in touch with some clients that go back 10 years. They're not actually direct clients now, but I still get the odd message here and there, and it's great to see on their journey, you know, how they've adapted and changed. And I fire them little things here and there and say, oh, have you looked at that? And they become almost like friends. And it's very similar with my own journey, because I've always been a keen cyclist. My cycling career, if you like, if that's the right word really, has gone sort of in line with, first of all, as a youth, joining a cycling club, doing the various things, becoming a road racer at a fairly early age, and then taking my cycling quite seriously, to then going through the period of meeting my now wife and deciding to have a large family. And I'm uber competitive. I am naturally very, very, very competitive, and I have to control that mechanism, because there's a balance that we have to strike. And I think this will lead into how we discuss fueling and nutrition. Yeah. It's all about balance, but it's also all about, you have to understand yourself.
Yeah.
You can take any information online, you can take what any guru is trying to say to you. There's all these different models of thinking. There's all these models of, well, have you tried fueling with fats rather than carbohydrates, reduce the sugar, and I'm not saying they're wrong, but what I'm saying is that there's elements of things out there we can handpick or cherry pick, if you like, and actually make a complete mess of it, because we don't know who we are. And the most important way to know who we are is to test.
Yeah.
And massive on testing. Now, that goes with the territory. It goes with, right, okay, if you're going to do, ultimately, I planned this, obviously the 50 Scottish climbs began as a little project for me last year that I thought, I just want to do this next year. It wasn't a charity challenge focus. It was just, I love climbing. I had this nutritional focus that was based on a bit of weight loss, but also looking at doing that in a performance scenario, so taking my time with it, not stripping off too much weight too quickly, and in order to see if I could handpick sort of 50 climbs and go out and ultimately get to the top of the Strava leaderboard. A very personal thing, not something I was really interested in telling anybody about or sharing, just doing it myself. Then there was the COVID-19, as we well know, and that changed how I approached my training, because life changed. Children were no longer going to school. I had a bit more time in preparation, so I started looking at my bike and did some changes here and there. But it also allowed me to really start to focus on the nutrition as well, even further. I had a bit more time to spare. And from that, what grew was I was involved with the handing out of some PPE gear and various things like that. And I started to see firsthand what was happening in the community, and hey, there's a need here for the elderly who are supported via these charities such as AIDS Scotland, AIDS Concern, and there's so many others that play a vital role. Just that one phone call a day to this lady who's 75, who doesn't have any other family that can come and visit her, was really a psychological lifeline to them. So I thought, well, let's do it as a bit of a charity challenge, which was quite good because that started to really focus me. And I started to think, right, we'll get some videos done, we'll get a bit of promotion. I'll look at who I can get as a sponsor with regards to, like I said, I've got Simon Howie locally, and just get a little bit of PR behind it to try and ultimately to raise funds. That was the idea. The more involvement we get, the better it becomes. And that's where I stumbled across. It was an advert that flashed up. Started looking at your product, and I'll get into that. But so yeah, it was sort of, first of all, when I look at a challenge that's going to be over and above what I've been doing normally. I train hard. I race really hard. When I get on my bike, I'm really pushing it out. But ultimately, looking at, I could do a very decent fast time for, let's say, 5-6 hours. So I could produce a lot of power for 5 or 6 hours, and I am naturally good at endurance. So for me, going out and doing a longer effort doesn't really fill me with any kind of dread. I think, well, I'm going to get through it. Now, that's where the mindset, I think, and the nutritional focus has changed over the years. Because every year, when we go on holiday to Devon and see our family, I always do like a crazy ride. I always do one or two where we might be travelling. Like last year, we travelled from Devon to Northampton. And I said to my wife, I'm going to set off at 3:30 in the morning. I'll see you there. And I arrived at 8 o'clock at night. So that's what I really enjoy. I enjoy that kind of looking at something and think, right, it's 365 kilometers, right? Can we do that? Can we do that in a day? Let's give it a go. Now, where I've actually changed as an athlete with regards to feeling is I would just go on that ride. I'm going back sort of 3-4 years now because it's changed. It's changed as I've evolved. And I would, put the phase stops, because you can't carry that amount of fuel with you. You have to stop and grab something. Yeah. And it would be very much non-focused. It would be like, okay, there'll be a Sainsbury's sort of, or a Tesco's Express somewhere. I'll grab a sandwich. I'll fire that in, a couple of Mars bars, chuck down a can of Coke, and then we'll stop, 3 hours down the road there. And it was anything, chocolate fudge cake, fire it in, and not really giving too much thought about what the actual fuel was, even knowing with having the information that this isn't really going to be the best thing. But we chuck it in and we go for it, and then you start getting the old stomach, things are repeating without going into too much detail. You know yourself, you can't stomach with food. starts coming up, affects your breathing. You've got stuff all over you, and it's like, this is not good. So I've got those memories in my head. I've got those memories as me doing these things when someone comes to me and says, this is what I want to do. And I say, okay, because I've learned, and I've learned maybe the hard way. So when I was taking on the challenges, I thought, right, well, to make this really interesting, I've always fancied doing this Everesting thing, which for anybody out there, for it to be quoted, there's actually a Hall of Fame. And there is actually a structure, there's a governing body almost, Everesting CC, which states how you do this challenge. Yeah. Now, if someone goes out and does 8,848 meters on their bike on any ride in one day, for me, that's an Everest, right? Because that's ultimately a hard shift, and they're quite happy for someone to call that an Everest. I'm not going to go saying to anybody that's not a real Everest. I'm not that sort of way minded. But the actual rules for it, if you want to be, right down to the nitty gritty and on the Hall of Fame, is you have to pick one climb, one segment on Strava, or you create your own segment, and you have to go up and down that segment, and it has to be up and down for the total number of reps that then equal 8,848 meters or above to be classified as an actual Everesting. If you deviate, do a loop or whatever, they'll analyze the file and they'll say it's not an Everesting, if you see what I mean. So there's strict rules to it. Now, when I was planning this out, I was looking at the climb. Now, the climb that I picked was not the best climb to do an Everest. Let's just say this straight away now, because you don't want a climb that's too long, that's not steep enough. Yeah. And the climb that I did it on was long and not very steep. It's 5.6% over 5 kilometers, and also it's got a flat section. It's got a steep finish, which again you don't really want, because by the time you're getting into rep 30, you're hitting this wall, and you're sort of discovering, I've got 1 kilometer at 10% to go up here, and your legs are saying nay. So yeah, there was a lot of things to learn. The reason for picking that particular climb was my main sponsor, Simon Howie Butchers. They have their factory right there, so we used their car park, and it was just that wee bit of extra. Hey, it all ties in. Yeah. Let's just do it on that climb. But it made sense. It didn't make sense in an Everest capacity, but it did in the charity focus and keeping things sort of streamlined. So when I was planning it, first things first, nutrition. I had worked diligently, probably for the last 3 months, increasing my hill reps, going through sort of 3,000 meters, 4,000 meters, up to 5,000 meters, as the Everest format, up and down, because I tell you what, there's a psychological implication to this, that you begin to realize that when you're just going up and down the same hill, it's not like you're just out in the countryside and you're just taking in a different view all the time. You're like, oh, that's this bit again. Oh, we're on this part of the climb. And there's a memory attached to how bad it was the climb before. It's like, if you imagine the worst possible climb is the one that you can see for 10 miles in front of you, it's kind of like that. It's all just coming, and you remember the last rep, and it drags on. But as I was structuring it, I thought, right, well, having a support team and having the right nutrition was key. And what that meant to me was how I'm going to fuel for it, how I'm going to prepare for the actual day. So that's the testing phase of what I'm going to do, how I'm going to fuel, how I'm going to see how if it works or it doesn't work. Yeah. And then ultimately plan a fueling strategy, which for me ended up becoming what I just called a micro-macro strategy, which was I ate small amounts regularly, and then I had larger feeds at sort of 2-hour intervals, which really worked. I'll get to how good the fueling strategy was in a minute. It was my legs and my body that gave out, to be honest. And I say my body, I mean just like the whole processing of everything was just gone, because I wasn't actually very well either, which was a little bit silly, but it wasn't that point where you're enough unwell to think I'm not going to attempt this, and then when you start it and you get to the half Everest, you think, well, I'm in it now. So I took 4 specific training sessions that were 6 weeks preceding the actual Everest, and really just wrote it all down. I've got a whiteboard in the office here, and I just structured it. I had it all written down, knew what I was going to eat, knew my carbohydrate requirements per hour, obviously proteins as well, which again is overlooked when you're doing distance. We should still be using some protein in there. Obviously hydration and looking at supplementation. So what I was going to have in the ways was having something in the pockets that I could just nibble on. And that was my feel good bars, basically, because they work. So yeah, I'd done 4 individual specific sessions from 5 hours up to 8 hours, going up and down during the hill reps, and thought, yeah, well, this fueling strategy is going to work. You know, on the 7-hour day out, everything was great. I was actually really, really strong. I thought, well, this is great. I'm never going to be able to do an Everest at that pace, but that was a good session. And that was the ultimate, really, was getting that prep. I always say to my guys, victory loves preparation. If you're prepared, and it's not just a simple thing of doing these things as tests, it's when you write them down, you're putting them into the mind, and you're starting to complete the job in here before you've started it. So you're picturing yourself winning, you're picturing yourself achieving, you're picturing yourself finishing, you're thinking, at 6,000 meters, I'm going to be in that, which is telling your mindset, I'm going to get to 6,000 meters.
Yeah.
There's no question we're not going to do this. We're going to get on this hill and we're going to do it. So morning of the climb, beautiful day, we just crack on. And the total distance, which was again really silly, was 340 kilometers whilst doing an Everest, which if you look at the Everesting Hall of Fame, you see that most of them, in fact all of them, I don't think I've found a longer one, are between 160 kilometers on a steeper hill, and 160 kilometers and around about 10-12 hours, up to maybe 250, 280. 340 is a stupid distance, I will say this to anybody, to be doing an Everest over
200 odd miles.
Yeah, but I fancied that. I fancied that as part of the challenge, and I did know it was going to be a little bit of just getting through it at the end, because I hadn't pushed myself up to those levels. I hadn't ridden 16 hours on the bike ever. I mean, 14 and a half was my longest. So for me, that was new territory anyway.
Yeah.
And I found that on the day that, as you said earlier, you ebb and you flow. You sort of like go through periods of feeling like, whoa, someone's come and joined beside you on the climb. A couple of guys had read the blog and they came from various cycling clubs just to give me a wee, I'll come and do a rep with you, Stu. And, you just get a massive lift. You get this lift because you're no longer, I mean, I'm a solitary cyclist. I like being out on my own, but you know what? I was glad of the company. Rep 20 was a particular one. A guy came and joined me. Then there's a couple of other guys. My best friend Mark, he joined me at the end and did about 10 reps with me, maybe more. And I think that the one thing that I noticed all the way through is my energy was good, as in I was processing food. I actually stopped at about 8 hours. My friends were there with a camper van, and I properly went to the toilet, which is excellent. I mean, when you're doing that, everything's working. And I was, I was quite surprised by that. But that's a demonstration, without going into too much detail, of I was comfortably sitting there nutritionally. I was keeping to the fueling strategy. There was no stomach cramps. I didn't use any caffeine. I don't use that, and I used a very, very small amount of sugar, apart from the sugars that are naturally in the bars. And I didn't begin to use gels to further on in the ride. It was pretty much fueling all on the feel good bars, and then the larger macro stops where I had a flask of porridge on the go, just a very sort of how would you say it? The viscosity, the consistency wasn't too thick, so it's really quite easy. I could get quite a lot of it in a few mouthfuls. A lot of rice cakes, an awful lot of oats. My protein was all from already prepared protein drinks, so I didn't want to take on sort of food like chicken and stuff like that, because again, it's the digestion process. It was trying to mix and match. How do I get as much good nutrition in, but also get the requirements that I need without overcooking it from the whole supplement side? So a lot of it, and I think as I look at Everest double, a lot of it's going to be liquidized food. I think that's going to be on the macro stops. So things like soups that are very high content of like sort of ricey kind of soups that are well blended. But everything not too stodgy, so you can actually get it in, and it does digest. And also on that point as well is warm food is really good. Having food at body temperature, it gives the body less to do. So things like even that warm porridge, it wasn't a particularly hot day, but it wasn't cold, it's July. But even that warm porridge just went in really well. And I think if we're firing in things that your body's then got to deal with digestion-wise, which is all a calorie process, it's all heating things up in there, that I think the warm food was really quite, I'd read about that and employed that for a few things. But I definitely look more at soups and stuff like that. It's going to be colder as well when I eventually come to do the double. So yeah, as I progressed through, one of the things I noticed again was just that my energy systems were good. So my gut was good, zero cramps at all. I did not have one cramp in that whole ride. I didn't have any reflux. I had no food coming back up at me and whatever. And I was able to eat right through to the very end. So the last 3 hours was painful, but it was only painful in the legs. My legs had given up. I mean, basically the lactic was just shot. And one of the things that I overlooked, I thought I had the right gear ratios. Even for me, I thought, right, well, I can spin that gear ratio up that hill, no problem. But hey ho, the last 3 hours, I was wishing I had a bigger collar in the rear. So again, that's all point to note. And yeah, so it was the legs. It was the legs that gave up. My mind obviously played the part in getting me through that barrier. And 7,500 meters was that death zone. When they talk about it in these climbing films, and you see it, and it's like every step now becomes like 5 normal steps and things like that. You think, you actually quite are in the death zone. You start to feel, it was 39 reps altogether, and you start feeling at 35, how am I going to do 36? On how 35 felt so bad, how's 36 going to happen? How's 37 going to happen? And then you get to 38 and you think, surely I've done it now, which you're there, but it's still painful. See, the things I've taken away from it is that I can improve my fueling strategy with regards to what I do. I can't prepare any better because the preparation that I did was what I thought was right. But I'll just prepare it in a slightly different way, where I'll have more soups, more liquidized food. Not for the point that like I was cramping. I just think it'll go in better in the way of being able to be digested and assimilated by the body. Hydration obviously was vital. Was having ample water throughout the day. And I had all that set up and all ready to go. As we look forward to the double, which is going to be in late October, my fire alarms have just gone off. You can probably hear that. As I look forward to the double in October, it's a totally different hill, totally different ball game. And in fact, for the double, it's not going to be a great deal further than the single in terms of distance. Because the hill is a straight hill. And the great thing about a straight sort of 9% hill is how fast you can descend. I lost a lot of time on the descent speed because Everesting is all about, you've got to go up. But the faster you can come down, the less time you're going to spend on the bike. So you're actually going to be more efficient, because people will say, well, if you're on the bike for longer coming down, you've got more recovery. Well, you haven't, because you're using muscles to corner. You're having to stay in the position. You're using your core. My abs the next day were ringing, just from holding that position. So when you've got a shorter, steeper hill with the right gearing, I'll be descending at 90 kilometers an hour, not 50. So my descent speed is going to be massively higher, which is going to really eat into the mileage time. There's been one other double Everest done in the UK. There's only been one recorded officially, which was done in 2019, and that was set. It's a time just over 40 hours, and I looked at it and I thought, 40 hours. Okay. And the rules are that you're allowed to sleep, but only for a maximum of 2 hours.
Yeah.
And you can intersperse. You can have 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there. But that's the rules by the Everesting CC organisation that they've put down for double Everest. Same rules on the reps, but you have to only allow yourself 2 hours sleep. I don't think there's a sort of a cut-off to how long it takes. But I'm hoping, I mean, who knows? I've got to do a lot more testing, but I'm hoping to go faster than 40 hours. Because I've done some maths and I'm thinking, well, my saddle time that I spent for the Everest was a lot longer than it needed to be. So if that same saddle time and effort and whatever was brought onto a different hill, I would have probably climbed 11, and I say probably because you just don't know, 11,000 meters in that sort of duration. So I'm already thinking, right, okay, that's my next target. My next training, right, I'm going to try and do like an 11,000-ish meters in training, and obviously focus again on nutrition. But once I've got that honed in, it'll become just natural. That it's like anything. The body has memory, muscles have memory, and you start to you can only get good at what you do by refining what you do. I'm a massive believer in that. I'm a believer in the growth sort of mindset that we're not sort of born with talents. We're not born with things that we're naturally able to do as such. I think that, we've got dispositions maybe toward different things by our characters and what we've learned, but anyone can become good at something with the right coaching, the right mental idea, the right preparation, planning. So I'm going for this thinking, right, I've got my targets, I've got my goal times, which I'm not going to share just now because that's a very personal thing, and I probably won't share them. And I've got my strategy. But number one in that is really getting the fueling and the nutrition. The importance of getting the nutrition right from 3 days before as well. To anybody who's thinking about doing longer events, distances, Everestings and whatever, the importance of honing in the nutrition from about 3 days out, looking at how you load, looking at how we are resting our bodies. So we're talking adrenal rest here. It all comes into the digestive process. People think that nutrition is just about what you put in your mouth. That's how you rest. It's how your metabolism operates when you're up and about and you've got a busy schedule. You've got to clear time in your diary before an event like this to think, I need to rest, I need to fuel properly, I need to digest my food properly, I need to absorb this, I need to soak myself full of this good nutrition in order that I've got the best possible start point on the day. And it's all about the prep. It's all about how we load, how we fuel. And I ate pretty much every 90 minutes on the day before. So I had a wee countdown timer on my phone, and I woke to eat. So I woke myself in the 36 hours previous to it. I woke at night to eat, and I did that because I knew I had a clearish diary. I could rest, and I could get a bit of sleep during the day, and that was another massive part of what I was able to do. My body clock was in the right place. I got to sleep in the afternoon before. I was in bed at 8:30, and I fell asleep at 9, and I woke up at 3:15 to get up and get ready to crack on. So I had good accumulative sleep at 6.5 hours nearly the night before, which is not my average. I usually average more than that, but it was adequate, and I was well fueled, and I was well ready to go on the morning. And that was apparent because, as I said at the beginning, didn't have any sort of energy dropouts. None of like sort of feeling, I need sugars or hitting the bonk, or your body starting to shake and you're just feeling absolutely starving. Absolutely none of that at all, which was great. That was a testament to, I think, the planning and the preparation, but also to what was having supplementary to that, and that was the last 4 hours having the hydrogels slotted in there as well, which again they just bubble and go down. It really is quite right from what you say on your marketing, and they're so easy to assimilate, and the feel good bars. I was probably getting through one of those every hour, I would imagine. imagine. Just sort of having a third of a bar every 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Doing that with various other things, and then having the longer stops. So yeah, it was a successful attempt. I was pleased by the end of it to have finished. And then looking back, I thought, well, there's nothing much better I could do in the terms of strategy. Just maybe how I put together what I'm eating, the way that I'm doing it, sort of souping it, smoothieing it, that kind of thing. I think it's going to work for me when we look at sort of maybe a double Everest, and I'm planning that towards the end of October, sort of loosely with the weather and things like that.
Yeah, no, fantastic. I'll share with you after this. I'll share with you some really good base recipe ideas for the soups.
Yeah,
they're absolutely fantastic base recipes for the kind of soup where you kind of boiling whole chickens in various things, and then you literally just blitzing the whole thing up, and they are absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. But no, I thought it was really interesting. You know, I think from kind of our perspective, my perspective, hearing the approach and how you're doing it, and obviously everybody's, like you said, everybody's very different. So obviously everybody kind of, you know, some people need more fuel, some people take less fuel. You know, you get people saying, oh, well, I'm training to be fat adapted, I am fat adapted, all those kind of things.
Yeah.
You know, to me, we're born fat adapted. It's more fitness that affects your fueling abilities, and often if people get used to training on less fuel and certain types of fuel, like we said earlier, they need less. If people train with feeling that they've got to take lots of certain things, they can then mentally feel that they've got to have lots of things, and that can cause issues when they're doing longer stuff. So like you said, it's all about practice and testing, and being open to ideas, but what I would say is, don't be kind of like sucked into kind of marketing in a sense. Like, think like, you know, there's all the marketing around kind of fructose, that if you have a fructose and a glucose dextrose mix, you can have kind of 90 grams of carbs an hour, and you might even be able to have 100 grams of carbs an hour. Things like that, you know, you might be able to do that for a couple of hours doing that mix, but the reality is over 12 hours, 16 hours, you ain't going to do it. So you've then got to also look at, well, where can I get some fats from? Because fats are actually, they're my slower burn fuels. So that's the thing that can complement my carbohydrate. And like you said, your protein. So we often say to guys, whether they're doing like ultras or Ironmans, to basically have like a recovery fuel every 5 to 6 hours.
Yeah.
Like you found, you know, you're actually starting that resynthesis process while you're on the go. You're offsetting the DOMs while you're on the go.
Yeah.
And also
that was one of the things I didn't actually put forward when I was explaining the fueling. Was I had, like I told you, I had my protein sort of all already mixed. Well, I had a recovery drink as well that was in 2 separate bottles that I had every 4 hours. Yeah. So I had like a mix of, you know, protein, carb, and sugar. So sort of 3-to-1, 3.5 to 1 ratio. In there. So sorry, just to interject, because I did do that. And it's important,
and I think it's something that people don't do, and we often speak to people at events, and we explain to them, we say to them to try it, and they can't see them looking, thinking, oh, that doesn't sound right, because I've read that you shouldn't have protein because it can upset your stomach. So absolutely, protein in a certain format will take ages to break down your stomach and cause issues. But in the right format, it doesn't. And it's like fiber. I've read also, you know, people say don't have fiber, avoid all fiber. But like you found, actually, if you have the right type of fiber and the right amounts of fiber, it actually helps you go to the toilet in the right way at the times, rather than in a disastrous mess. You know, so it kind of goes back to that. You've got to find that kind of balance. And it's a balance of everything. You can't just be a carb. You know, you can't just say, right, I'm just going to fuel on carbs. I'm just going to fuel on fats. I'm just going to do. it's about finding that balance of each of them that suits the way that your body has been evolved to work.
And that's the biggest point. It's like what I say to all my guys is it's what suits you.
Yeah.
So when I'm employed as a coach, my job, my responsibility, right, to me and to my client is it's all about you, right? I don't want my clients looking at me and what I've done, right? I'm in no way interested in that, because that's just my stuff on paper that's individual to me. And I don't want them looking and comparing to anybody else. I want them to find out the truth about them. So I want them to know, okay, well, for X client, we found out this doesn't work for you. Now, how do we do that? We have to go out, we have to do the testing, we've got to do the due diligence, we've got to make sure that we document it, quantify it, it has to be written down, it's got to be a method, it's got to be approached correctly, and it has to be then worked out against what we've been doing and see the difference. And whether you're aero testing as a time trialist, whether you're looking at what wheels you're using, whether you're looking at what you're putting into your body as fuel, you've got to do the work. And there's no magic pill for having to go and work through this stuff. And I've said to the client, I was speaking to someone yesterday, I said, the level that you want to achieve on anything, I was talking specifically about nutrition, is how much you're willing to put into it. Because I can give you the right advice, the general covering advice, but we have to work out who you are. We have to know what your body is going to do on this event. As I've got someone who's preparing for a 350-kilometre ride down in Wales for next season. It's a thing called the Dragon or something. And it's very, very important to get what's right for that individual. And of all the stuff we've said today, I think the biggest portion of what we're saying is, because I don't want people thinking that we're saying a word like balance and then thinking, well, how do I get that? What does balance mean? And I really wanted to say that for anybody who's looking to find that balance, it's the balance is you. The balance is the person who is you that's taking the water every 20 minutes, hydrating, thinking about it. You've got to create a culture in yourself. Yeah. You've got to create the knowledge for yourself based on all the information that's out there, with help of, if you've got a coach, or you're looking at a nutritionist, or you're looking at just trying to work out for yourself what works. You're going to have to take product A versus product B, or fuel strategy A versus fuel strategy B, or whatever it may be, and go out and try it and see if it works. Analyze and look at your performance, because usually you'll find that, hey, I felt great today. There'll be a reason for it. People talk about just going out and you just have this magic day now and again. Well, I'm not a firm believer in somehow the body is just able to perform and sometimes it's not. It's what you do in the days prior, the weeks prior, how we look at the strategies, how we fuel, and it builds up over time. Yeah. You start to build a much better tempo, a much better platform to be able to perform on. And again, for anybody listening and tuning into this, it's not about sort of thinking that the word balance means non-specific, because balance is specific, and balance is only obtained by working out who you are, looking at your fueling, trying it, and trusting what you're putting in your body. When I look at a product like when I've done the Mountain Fuel, I've looked at what's in it, and I've said, right, okay, well, there's none of that crappy syrup in it. We've got a good source of sugar from that. We've got, you just love it when it gets warm and it starts to gloop and you get the oils. And for me, I'm just like, because I do work a lot on fat adaptation. I mean, we could do a whole talk on fat adaptation, but we're not going to do it today because it's massive. And yeah, it really is simple as finding out what works for you. And there's lots of good help and good information out there. You don't have to pay someone thousands of pounds as a nutritionist or whatever to get it right. You can work it out and you can do things for yourself with the help of people who do actually care, that will give you some free advice and like we're doing now. We're openly sort of sharing how we do things, and at the end of the day, it's the result. It's we got through an Everest. We're going to get through a double Everest. We are going to do it, and yeah. It's like the confidence isn't arrogance. The confidence comes from I know I'm doing what I'm doing right. I know my training's right. I know my nutrition's right. So it's not an arrogance. It's like a confidence. It's like no one can just hand pluck an Everest out and say, I'm going to do it. There's so many failed attempts at Everest. It's unbelievable just because of they think they can just go and cycle up and down the hill for 10 hours. There's a lot more to it. So, yeah, I mean, great stuff. I mean, and it's a lot of good insights today into both Mountain Fuel and you guys and the foundations to where you've come from, and obviously yourself and Darren there as a nutritionist. That is massively important for any sports performance brand, that you've got the scientific qualification to back up. Hey, we're doing this. Obviously, it's a general product. You can't make it specific for athlete A, but as a coach who refers your product, we can say with our structure and knowledge, that's when to slot that in. That's when to use that supplement. No, you're not going to need it. You're not going to need it for a 60-minute hard tempo ride or even 2 hours. But when we're starting to go into more of the endurance work, then this is how we structure it, and that's what we do. But I think are we done there? Are we?
Yeah, no, I think so. And I reckon the next time we chat, I think it would be good to have a crack about the fat adaptation, because I think there's so much misinformation out there. I think there's so many people that kind of have a view on it and maybe don't really understand it and have kind of just read Mr. Google and kind of taken a viewpoint on it. And I think it would be a good thing for people to understand. And obviously you've been through that journey, you've been through that process, and you've looked into it a great deal. So I think it'd be really interesting to chat to you. I would say I'm without, you know, me personally, I would say I'm quite a fat adapted athlete, but then I would say we've all got that ability. We are all naturally fat adapted athletes, but I think some of us are, through training, whatever it may be, are maybe more open to it, better at it. I don't know, but again, let's save that for our discussion. And
I think to close on that, just to quantify, because I like to quantify the reasons as to why, when we look at fat adaptation, is that I was too much sugar fueled. So that's the point I want to make to anybody listening, is that or to the viewers listening, is that I was too much sugar orientated in my fueling. And this goes back like 5 years, 6 years now, and it's taken time. I've not just gone suddenly fat adapted. It's been a journey. It's evolved as I've changed my whole nutritional strategy. But one thing I did identify was, hey, way too many gels that are just full of sugar all the time, even on short rides, up to the max of how much sugary drinks mix I could put into my sports bottle, even for like a short base ride, where in fact the need for it is zero, you know. But now realizing from a perspective of hindsight that I'm looking back and thinking there's times to slot that in. There's times when that sugar energy is fantastic. There's times that we need to refocus on the glycogen levels. There's times post-exercise that we have to make sure glycogen is brain fuel, you know.
Absolutely.
It's brain fuel. We have to keep it topped up, and the brain runs everything. We're a neurological, muscle memory, twitching electric organism that is phenomenal. But we have to know how it works. So next time, let's get into fats and sugars and adaptations and the pitfalls of maybe too much sugar or overthinking it and getting into the minefield of, am I doing things right? Am I doing things wrong? And maybe that taken away from the whole enjoyment of training. So Rupert, great chatting to you. And thanks for this morning. Sounds like I've been leading it, but I haven't really. I'm just closing it, and it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, so good to speak, and we'll catch up soon.
Yeah, all the best. Speak soon.
Bye. Cheers, mate.
Bye bye.